Donald Trump and Xi Jinping agreed this Thursday at their first meeting in over 6 years to delay export controls on rare earths and on computer chips. The deal they struck lasts for 1 year and follows months of escalating tariffs, retaliatory restrictions, and stalled negotiations. The US and China additionally reached agreements on American tariffs related to fentanyl and on tit-for-tat levies on each other's shipping industries. While Donald Trump sounded triumphant after the meeting, the deal was mostly seen as a win for China, where the US accepted a negotiating link between its restrictions on high-tech exports like AI chips and China's restrictions on rare earth exports. With the 20% fentanyl tariff halved, the average tariff rate on Chinese goods falls to 31%, which is well below the 50% US tariffs on Brazil and India, and below the 35% tariffs on many Canadian goods, making production in China more attractive, at least for now. While markets seem to have breathed a sigh of relief, the underlying tensions are still in place, and The Economist described the agreement as sketchy, temporary, and built on sand. Rare earth elements have been a key negotiating point in the most recent standoff. These are crucial components in electric motors, smartphones, airplanes, fiber optic networks, medical imaging equipment, and much more. They also play a role in missile guidance systems and jet engines. China has spent decades building dominance in their production, and that dominance is now being used as leverage. Rare earths are a group of 17 metallic elements, and if you learn how to spell all of their names, you'll have a real edge in playing Scrabble. They're not particularly rare, as their name would imply, but they're often found together in low concentrations, which makes mining them and separating them a very complex and expensive process. The refining stage is messy, energy-intensive, and often involves strong acids. This is partially why China dominates the industry. It built the infrastructure over the years, accepted the environmental costs, and scaled up production when other countries were reluctant to get involved. While rare earth production has grown massively over the last 25 years, demand has grown just as fast. These elements have become almost indispensable in modern manufacturing. Neodymium magnets, for example, are used in electric motors, wind turbines, and hard drives. They're small, powerful, and efficient, ideal for miniaturizing components and reducing energy consumption. It would be difficult to build something like a drone without them. Rare earths are also used in things like polishing powders, battery alloys, and medical imaging equipment. They play a critical role in the production of fiber optic cables, which form the backbone of the internet and modern telecommunications networks. Different rare earths are used to dope the glass fibers, enabling the amplification of light signals over long distances without degradation. This is essential for maintaining high-speed data transmission across continents, powering everything from video streaming and cloud computing to financial transactions and global communications. Without rare earths, the efficiency and reach of fiber optic networks would be severely limited, undermining the infrastructure that supports the digital economy. Military applications exist too, and these are usually hyped in articles whenever the supply of rare earths is cut off. But these applications are not the primary driver of demand. Harvard points out that electric cars require 6 times the mineral inputs of conventional cars, and wind plants require 9 times more minerals than gas-fired plants. So while rare earths do have military uses, like in missile guidance systems, jet engines, and radar equipment, the quantities needed for military applications are relatively small. The main demand comes from civilian industries like electronics, cars, energy, and telecommunications. From the 1960s through to the 1980s, the United States was the dominant global producer of rare earth elements, largely due to the Mountain Pass mine in California, which was shut down in 2002 after a toxic waste spill where radioactive wastewater leaked into the surrounding desert. The mine was no longer viable due to cheaper Chinese imports, environmental compliance costs, and pollution issues. The site was revived in 2012, went bankrupt in 2015, and was taken over by financiers who founded MP Materials in 2017. Earlier this year, the US government acquired a 15% stake in the company for $400 million as part of a broader public-private partnership aimed at building a domestic supply chain for rare earth magnets. Apple has committed $500 million in a long-term partnership to source American-made rare earth magnets and to build a rare earth recycling facility at Mountain Pass. Starting in the 1990s, a combination of environmental regulations, corporate short-termism, and outsourcing led to a decline in US rare earths production. China, meanwhile, strategically invested in the industry, offering lower costs and fewer environmental constraints. By the early 2000s, China had overtaken the US and today supplies around 80% of the world's rare earths and handles over 90% of the refining. China also manufactures nearly all of the magnets that use rare earth materials. In China, the entire supply chain, from ore to finished components, is vertically integrated and geographically concentrated. China's dominance is possibly more strategic than economic in nature, as selling rare earths isn't hugely profitable. The US spends more than 20 times as much on avocado imports each year as it does on rare earths. The difference, of course, is that no one ever threatened to cut off the guacamole supply. Because rare earths are so deeply embedded in the supply chains of nearly every advanced industry, control over their flow means influence over production timelines, pricing, and provides huge geopolitical leverage when needed. China's geopolitical edge in controlling this small industry comes from its ability to cause huge disruptions. When export licenses are delayed or denied, supply chains around the world come to a halt. Rare earth elements, despite their name, are not particularly rare, but the ability to refine and produce them at scale is. China has built that capacity through decades of industrial investment, environmental tolerance, and technical process development. The process is messy, expensive, and difficult to scale up quickly, making it extremely difficult to rebuild this industry under Western environmental and regulatory constraints. Environmental approvals can take years in Western countries. Labor costs are significantly higher than in China, and expertise in production is extremely limited, as most of the engineers with experience in this space retired many years ago. Even with government backing and corporate investment, progress has been slow, as rebuilding capacity requires more than just access to raw materials. It requires technical expertise, regulatory changes, and long-term investment. China's export licensing system has become a central tool in its trade strategy. Since 2023, the Chinese government has expanded the scope of these licenses to cover more than 700 different products, including rare earths, manufacturing equipment, and other critical inputs. Licenses are typically issued for 6 months and require detailed disclosures about the buyer, the intended use, and the final product that will be built. In some cases, exporters are asked to collect technical documentation or proprietary information from their customers as part of the license application process. The licensing process gives Beijing a window into foreign supply chains. By collecting data on how and where rare earths are used, Chinese authorities can track demand patterns, identify potential stockpiling, and monitor for buyers who might be reselling the materials. The licensing system also allows for selective enforcement on a customer-by-customer basis. Licenses can be delayed or quietly withheld, creating uncertainty for buyers without the need for formal bans. In recent months, German firms have received more approvals than their American counterparts, and Indian buyers have faced even longer delays. The structure of the licensing regime reflects a broader shift in China's approach to trade. It mimics the example set by the United States with the Foreign Direct Product Rule, a U.S. export control regulation that extends the reach of U.S. restrictions to items made abroad if they are the direct product of U.S. technology, software, or equipment. Beijing has adopted this logic, applying restrictions to goods produced outside of China if they rely on Chinese inputs or know-how. If the United States was cut off by China, other nations might hesitate to re-export to American buyers, not just to avoid jeopardizing their own access, but also because recent US trade aggression has strained diplomatic and commercial relationships with the rest of the world.